Hi, writers! Wow, you guys worked a lot yesterday. Drafting and drafting and drafting. Love how you kept the norms and you really were trying to get your story out of your notebook and onto paper. And so today you might be going, Miss Dale, I'm noticing this redrafting to bring out meaning. What? Didn't we write our story yesterday? Well, that's true. You did write one version of your story yesterday. But I want you to think about something. I want you to think about how when you're trying to get really good at something and just by doing it once doesn't mean that you're going to get good at it, right? I'm thinking back to like when I was learning how to ice skate and I was learning how to skate backwards. Well, like once I learned how to skate backwards, I could skate backwards. But I got better because I practiced, I watched other people, I had people teach me how to do crossovers and things like that. So just because you do it once doesn't mean that it's the best that you can do. So today we're going to really think about how we can redraft our story by thinking about what our story is really, really about. Like, what is the story really about? So put our learning objective right here. I want you to pretend with me for a second that this is my story that I have. And I want you just to pretend with me. I'm going to read to you a story that I have. And I want you to pretend that this is my story. And then I'm going to stop and talk about it a little bit. Yesterday I was in my kitchen cooking. And for a moment, everything was okay. But all of a sudden, the air conditioner stopped working. Sweat was rolling down my cheeks. I tried to open the window and the screen fell out. I sat down in the middle of my kitchen floor with my head in my hands. Maggie, my dog, came over and laid down next to me. So I feel like in this part of my story, what I'm really showing you guys is how frustrated I was and how angry I was because I was trying to cook and it got really hot and all of that. But that's not really what I want to show. What I really want to show is thinking about this last part here about Maggie, and she's my dog, and how important it is to have Maggie in my life and what she does for me. So, remember, you're pretending with me, so poof, Miss Dale wrote a redraft, and here is my revised redraft. Yesterday I was in my kitchen cooking all of a sudden. The air conditioner stopped working. Sweat was rolling down my cheeks. I tried to open the window, and the screen fell out. My dog Maggie was watching me the whole time. I knew she was trying to figure out what was going on. I sat down on the floor for a moment, and she came up to me and nuzzled her nose into my arm. She knew I was feeling bad, and this was her way to try to help me. So I want you just to think for a moment. How did I go from my first story and change it to show what I really wanted to show was the importance of my dog? I want you just to think for a moment. What is it that I did? How did I go and show you my true meaning in my story? Think for a minute, please. Hopefully you guys were thinking about how I added in this part. I made the part of me being frustrated and hot and, I made that part shorter, and I made this part about my dog. All of this part about my dog, the bigger part of my story. So really focusing in not on how upset and how hot and sweaty and everything and all the things that were going wrong. Instead, I focused in on this part here, which was the part that was going right. So I want us to think about our own stories, the ones that you drafted yesterday. And I want you to think about what is the message that you really, really want to tell in your story. Do you really want to tell about being hot and sweaty, or do you really want to tell about how important it is to have, your dog help you out when things are feeling a little bit rough? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a brand new sheet of paper And I'm going to make it like a little booklet. And you can do the same thing. So it's almost like I have a little book. So I have all these different pages. I can make my booklet anyway. I could open it like this. You know, I could do beginning, middle, end, whatever you can do. And I want you to think about it. I'm going to show you, and then I want you to try this out. I want you to think about your story that you drafted yesterday and think about a new way that you could tell your story. So I'm going to do this with my story about Julia and the sea urchin, and I'm going to think about how I might be able to tell that story in a new way. So I'm going to take a look at some of these tips here. So what's really important in that story is knowing that even when you get older and grow up, that you know, you sometimes still need your mom. I could start earlier or I could start later. I could flash back and forward in my story. I have to remember to make sure I'm telling the story, not like a phone conversation, but like narrators and writers of books do. Or I can also build up the parts that lead to my big moment. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the story. This is going to sound a little weird, but I'm going to start the story at the end when we were at the hospital. I'm going to start the story at that part, and I'm going to just write here, begin story at the end in the hospital. So my story is going to begin with being in the hospital in the emergency room and thinking back to this moment and how you know, she really needed me and looked up to me and was really counting on me to be, you know, the mom, because she was like scared. I was scared too, but I didn't want to show her how scared I was. And so thinking about holding her hand when the doctor was pulling the little needles out of her knee. I'm gonna write that, holding her hand. Holding her hand, pulling out the needles, because sea urchins have these like long black needles, pulling out needles. And also when they put this like medicine, and it kind of stung, putting on medicine. Okay, because I really want to show right from the beginning this important part. And then on my next, so that's my beginning, and then my next part is going to be flashing, going back to that moment when she came out of the water. So going back to the beach. So I'm going to go from thinking about my big story, thinking about the hospital, and then I'm going to go into the how we got to the hospital. So how we ended up in a hospital. Not just a hospital, in an Italian hospital. It's very tricky for somebody that has very little Italian. It's just going to be about how Julia was upset. We didn't know what was happening, and we were trying to, in the moment, figure out what was happening. And then I'm going to go into the end of my story where I think back about being a mom. And how, not only with Julia being a mom, but how my own mom, even though I'm an adult, like sometimes she helps me get through big things. So now I went from the story about Julia having this thing happen to her on a beach and the way I reacted to it, to the story about really being a mom and how important it is to know when you need to step in and be the mom, be the brave face, and then also thinking about myself being a mom in this moment, but in other moments, and about how my mom is important in the things that she's done. So I just want you to think for a minute how some of the things that I did to redraft my story, to tell the story is about how being a mom is, it never ends really. It's always, even when they're teenagers, they still need you. When they're 30, they still need this person in their life, a mom, a grandmother, an aunt, somebody in their life that is always kind of there looking out after them. So think for a minute and think about how your story and what your big meaning in your story is for a minute. And just, if you can, on a Post-it or on a piece of paper or even in your writer's notebook, jot down what your story is really about. Is it really about that moment, or is it about something bigger? So take a minute to look over your draft yesterday. You could write this on a Post-it, you could write it in your writer's notebook, but think about, what is your story really, really about? Okay, great. So writers, today, thinking about how you might redraft your story to bring out the real meaning, you might want to start by making a little booklet like I did, right? You have just a blank piece of paper and you fold it and you make a little booklet. And all I did was just draft some little bits to help me remember what each part is going to be. Keeping in my mind the whole time when I'm writing this new draft is not about the sea urchin and Julia being scared and upset, but about me and how important the job of being a caretaker, a mother is. So I'm going to redraft my story today, keeping that big idea in mind. And I want you today to redraft your story, keeping that big idea in your mind. So these are some tips right here on this page to help you, and I can't wait to read these new ways that you're going to tell your story, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Okay, writers, happy writing. Bye-bye.